back cruising in Alaska. I'm Serene Hutchinson from Juneau Tours, and you know we all love a man in uniform, and today I have a man in uniform, a forest ranger. In fact, I may not be using the correct title, but he'll correct me. This is my friend John Neary. John, thanks so much for being here today.
I'm delighted, Serene.
Are you a forest ranger?
Yeah, that's well said.
Is that well said?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Huge. Well, you didn't have the hat.
Well, you didn't call me a park ranger.
Oh,
that's what's so cool.
Oh, okay. So park rangers wear the hats.
Yes.
Forest rangers get to have a nice hairstyle.
If you want to put it that way, okay, I'll take that.
That's how you tell the difference. Excellent. Well, I'm so glad you're here, and you are a year-round person. How long have you been in Juneau, though?
36 years.
In Juneau?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So now tell us a little bit about John behind the glacier.
You know, for 30 of those years, I was working out in the backcountry of the Tongass National Forest, because that's what we are, right? We're on the Tongass National Forest, the nation's biggest, the most beautiful in my opinion. And I spent a lot of time out in Tracy Arm and Endicott Arm, for example, Admiralty Island, which has the most bears of anywhere, you know, and working in villages like Angoon. And so I really got a nice taste of what Alaska really has to offer. That was my first 30 years of Juneau residency, and my last 6 years have been at the Mendenhall Glacier specifically.
Great. And so you work at the visitor center, or
I do.
Okay. So what's your title and responsibility specifically?
I'm the director, and specifically it means that I have 10 permanent employees and about 20 temporary seasonal employees that work each year. And we're busy just trying to accommodate about 500,000 people who want to come out and see the glacier and everything else we have to offer.
With 20 parking spaces.
Right. And that's very well said. You know, if it weren't for our tour operators who use buses to bring people out, we'd be like Yellowstone National Park, where it's just one long traffic jam.
Yeah. Excellent. So you were in the backcountry, and now you're constantly surrounded by people.
You know, I make the joke often that I saw more people on my first day at the glacier than I saw in my previous 30 years in the backcountry. And it's not far from the truth, because the number of people I see at the glacier are all on the National Forest. When I was in the backcountry, I'd be sitting on the shoreline watching them all float by on boats, you see. There were very few people that got off those boats and actually came onto the National Forest.
Okay. So that reminds me of one of the common, I guess, misconceptions that people have. We in Juneau, we just say we're going to the glacier.
Yeah.
There's lots of glaciers, but the Mendenhall Glacier is the glacier.
The glacier.
The glacier. But when we say we're going to the glacier, people assume like they're going to be walking on the glacier, and they're like, am I going to fall in a crevasse? So both that misconception, and then also explain to people who just came up on a cruise ship and probably saw glaciers, why should they go to the glacier, to the Mendenhall Glacier?
They probably saw them from a distance. It's pretty rare to actually get one of those mega ships right up close to the ice. If you do, you're lucky, but that's pretty rare because of hull damage, hitting those big icebergs.
Right.
So like most things on a cruise ship, you're getting that 7th floor view, you know, a mile out. And so it's wonderful for moving through a big landscape like the Tongass. It's not so good to see the details of what the shadows look as they're passing over a crack or in the glacier, or you know what the temperature of the water feels like in that lake that's below the glacier, or you know those salmon that are swimming up the stream nearby. You can't see any of that from the cruise ship.
Exactly. That's such a good point. And then the other point, when we say the glacier, what do they expect? They're not going to be walking on it, right?
Yeah, that is a misconception. In fact, one of the first things we hear when people come down our pathway is, how do I get up onto the glacier? And we say, well, you can't really, because it takes some expertise. You need the ropes and the climbing gear and the experience, and you need a backup plan when you fall in a crack, and you know all these kinds of things. So unless you already happen to be up on the ice because you took a helicopter there, and you know you're going to do this and that with an experienced guide, for the other 99.9% of the people, they're going to see it from the visitor center.
Right. However, even though when you go to the visitor center, you can't walk up onto the glacier because
Right.
you're separated by a lake, like you said.
Mhm.
What do you get at that park?
So you get that perspective from a mile and a half away, and you could get a closer perspective if you took a different kind of adventure. But from that mile or mile and a half away, you're going to get a chance to see the lower part of a glacier that's connected to a 1,500 square mile ice field, the third largest in Alaska. And that's going to really give you a sense of how this glacier fits into this landscape from a fixed point. You don't have that on the ship as you're moving through. You're kind of getting a brief glimpse, and then you go by, and before you know it, you've gone to the restroom, and you come back, and you're in a different bay, right? Here you have a chance to feel it, to feel the wind coming off it, to get a sense of, as I mentioned previously, the sounds that are coming around you, the sound of a salmon splashing through a stream, or the sight of a bear moving down after that salmon. So you're going to get the full experience. You're going to get immersed, and it means bring some warm clothes, because it might be chilly, and it means have some good experienced people around you, or follow directions of the rangers about, not eating your sandwich right out in front of the bear, that kind of thing.
Keep it all zipped up, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So you mentioned bears, I bet people are wondering, how often, do you have a kind of guesstimate of how often it is that guests might get a chance to see bears?
If you happen to be there between mid-July and, say, the end of August, your chances are really good of seeing a bear, the black bear especially. And that's because the salmon are in the streams and the bear are after the salmon. So if you get down there at the Steep Creek Trail, where there's these wonderful elevated platforms that keep it safe for both the bear and the people, your chances are pretty good of seeing a bear. And that reputation is starting to spread, so we're seeing a lot of interest in that.
Yeah. You know what, I just to answer my own question, so I live a mile from the glacier. And I laugh when people tell me, oh, I was there 5 years ago, or I've already seen a glacier, because I live a mile away. And whenever I go there, which sometimes I go a couple times a week, every time I'm there, I take a picture. Mm-hmm. And I mean, as soon as...
It's almost irresistible, isn't it?
I think so. And it looks a little different every time, based on the light and the weather.
I was out there just, as I mentioned to you earlier, I was out there just a half hour ago. The sun was just setting. And so it cast that really long, low light across the face of the glacier, which was just glowing orange.
Yeah.
And in that low light, you get to see every crack and every texture change of the glacier. And I wanted to pull my camera. I said, no, I don't want to take another picture.
I'm a professional.
I've got thousands of these things. I'm just going to enjoy it in the moment, is what I said to them. But every day is picture worthy. Even those days where the fog is thick and you can't even see there's a glacier there, but you squint through it and you just see the outlines of it. And then the fog is gradually lifting and you're getting bits and pieces that tease you into it. It all has some value.
I agree. I think it's such a remarkable place.
Yeah.
And along those lines, it's moving.
Yeah.
It is moving. So what is the rate of recession?
Recession is a good word. Yeah, so this is a glacier that melts more than it calves. Okay, what that means is that it's constantly melting just from the warm temperatures that we're seeing more and more of.
Right. Last summer was really warm.
Yes, it was. It was I think it was the third warmest on record. And in some places we set records in Juneau on several days. So it was a really warm summer, and that glacier was melting away. So that's more of what we are seeing now, is that the glacier is actually just kind of deflating, is the word I use, more than it is moving back the valley like it did over the last 200 years. It's been moving backwards up the valley as it recedes from its maximum 1,800 years ago, the recent maximum. So this melting is a little insidious because it isn't as dramatic as, say, the collapsing face of the glacier, the big wave produced, that sort of thing that you see from the ship in, say, Sawyer Glacier, Tracy Arm. It's just, some of us go back year after year and say, wait a minute, was that rock there last year?
Right.
Or, gosh, wasn't the glacier a whole lot closer to this trail at this point? Now it's, Mark Kelly described to me, he's a photographer, he described to me that when he first came to Juneau, he could walk right out on the ice. And now when he goes to the same spot, it's 7 stories below where he used to stand and walk right out onto it. So you see it's starting to just shrink in every way.
Yeah, the famous ice caves that became famous online Is there anything left of that for real
No.
avid hikers? No.
No, in fact, the glacier has receded completely out of the valley where that cave was.
Right.
What that means is two important things. One is, well, it's narrowing and thinning, as I mentioned, but also the stream that came off the mountain that actually formed the cave can never form a cave again, right? Because the glacier has left that valley.
Right, because it's the stream that's creating it.
The streams create that because they have relatively warm water. It's not really
Pouring
warm,
through,
but
but-
relatively to the ice. They pour in and they melt the ice and form this cave on their course. That can't happen again in that spot. And that spot happened to be unique because it was so accessible to people.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
So your clients will ask about that. They'll be like,
They
I
will.
want to see the cave.
Yes, it was on so many you must see before you die lists,
Yes.
or the 10 best things in Alaska lists. It was all over the internet.
Yeah.
Those opportunities aren't there anymore, but it is still a really special experience to get anywhere near the glacier.
I agree. And so along those lines, so when our friends, the agents, are going to have people come, what are some tips that you can give us? First of all, if they're traveling in groups, because the theme of our recent shows are about traveling with groups, bringing groups to Alaska on a cruise. What are some group tips that you could give to our friends out there?
We're seeing a lot more groups. I think that classically it would be mostly couples, and now we're seeing the extended families coming with those couples as cruising is growing in popularity with all ages. So yes, we're seeing a lot. We're also seeing more organized groups, especially Asians who come in really big groups.
Yes.
But aside from that, I don't know what the ideal group size is, but in my opinion, it's just a few people. It's 5 to 7, 8. And the reason why is because you can just move around the site easier.
Yes.
Because it can get crowded, especially if you were there on a Monday afternoon. It would be crazy. It's so busy at the glacier. So that's another hint, is don't come on Monday afternoon.
Or Tuesday.
Or Tuesday,
Yeah.
you're right, or Tuesday.
Yeah, Monday and Tuesday. If
Yeah.
you can avoid it,
Yeah.
look at your cruise itinerary and pick a cruise line that doesn't arrive in Juneau on Monday or Tuesday. And the nice thing is that will keep you clear in all your ports of call.
Yeah.
Because Monday and Tuesday are crazy in Juneau. Tuesday and Wednesday are crazy in Skagway, and Sunday and Monday are crazy in Ketchikan. So if you pick one of those opposite of those, then you'll have a better time at every port of call as far as crowds.
Oh, it's so true. Everything's going to be easier. You're going to be able to move around the site easier. Your bus driver is going to be less grumpy because they can park and move through the
No,
site
that would never
easier.
grumpy. No, there's no grumpy drivers.
Okay, I take that back. But no, your experience overall is just going to be better if you're not one of the huge crowd. And so, yeah, Thursdays and Fridays at the Mendenhall would be a lot better.
Yes, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, all
Yeah.
work. And actually Sunday morning's really nice there as well.
Yeah, Sunday
Yeah.
gets busy though.
Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, it gets busy.
It's true. Okay, so I want to go back to trails because our friends out there are going to have people. I want to see the ice caves, and they're going to have to break the bad news that you can't really do that, especially in any case. That was never a hike that I would have recommended to a cruise
It's a
ship
tough hike,
passenger.
yeah.
Well, mostly because of the time constraints,
Right,
right?
exactly.
So we're dealing with time constraints, but I know there's people that want to really experience the glacier. They don't want to just snap a selfie and then go. A lot of people do know about the Nugget Falls hike, which I love. I think that's a really lovely one. Very well maintained trail.
Also the most popular on our national forest.
Most popular, exactly.
Some days it's like a sidewalk in a city.
It is. I've seen people doing it in walkers.
It's a great trail.
It is
but
a good trail.
Timing matters a lot. On
It
that.
does. You got to know.
Yeah.
We tell our customers, even though officially it's shorter than this, we tell our guests it takes an hour and a half. Even though that's like a longer estimate, but that gives you time to stop,
Yes.
take photos,
It does. Really enjoy it.
chase a squirrel,
Yeah.
whatever, things like that. So as the expert though, I mean, a lot of people know about Nugget Falls. I'd like to hear about a couple other hikes that you would recommend, maybe some different effort levels, but that are easily done by a cruise ship guest with a limited amount of time.
Absolutely. The one that comes to mind first, I already mentioned, that's Steep Creek Trail. And that's the one that goes right along the salmon stream. So especially if you're there in late July and August, you're going to have that best chance of seeing a salmon and possibly a bear. And that's fully accessible, so you can do it with all the members of the family, even those in wheelchairs or with walkers and that kind of thing. Of course, you'll go slower, but it's very accessible. And you're in this beautiful streamside habitat with the trees and the warblers are singing, and you might see that eagle swoop out over the lake, or
Porcupine.
Yeah, porcupine, very common sight.
I've never seen one before I moved here.
I know, and people think, really, they come in trees? I
Yeah,
never
they
thought that
climb.
they climb trees, and there's all these fascinating things about that trail. And it goes right along the parking lot, so you're never really very far. If for some reason you're delayed or something, you can always pop back out into the road and parking lots. And then if you have a little more time, swing onto the Trail of Time and extend your walk, because the Trail of Time is also really very accessible. It's called the Trail of Time, not because it takes much time, but because it goes back.
You'll be 100 years old when you're done.
It goes back through time. It starts at the old site of the powerhouse that was 100 years ago, where the power for all the Juneau mines came from. And then it takes you up past those pipelines that brought the water down to the powerhouse. And then it takes you a little further on, and you'll see these etchings in the rock that say 1937, and you'll wonder, what's that? And that's where the glacier face was in 1937. So you're walking not only through the historic time of white man settling in this area, but also through the glacial time of when the ice was receding back through time as the climate has been warming. And the
As you
glaciers
travel
warming.
this lush rainforest
And
floor.
it's a lush rainforest floor. Thank you for bringing that up too, because you're in moss and ferns and beautiful spruce and hemlock forest. The trail is easy to walk. As I mentioned, it's also accessible, and it spills you out right at the door of the visitor center. So you can then stroll right into the visitor center, enjoy the exhibits, use the restrooms if you need to, see the movie, enjoy that amazing view. It's quite a nice combination of those
So
two
that
trails.
was Steep Creek Trail and Trail of Time.
Trail of Time.
Yeah. You
And
got
then-
another?
Yeah, if you're more adventurous and if you have another couple hours,
Okay.
the East Glacier Trail climbs up above the Trail of Time. And you start from the same trailhead, but you can climb 700 feet up the valley wall. In fact, you're climbing right through the zone where the glacier plowed all those trees over, right up outside of the zone that was the forest that wasn't touched by the glacier. You get to see those differences and then look out over the whole lake and valley and really take in the whole scene in a way that you can't from down lower.
How long do you recommend to set aside for that? If you're
2.5 hours.
2.5 hours?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, it's not long in terms of distance. It's just that you're going up 700 feet and you
Yeah,
want to
you're
have
wa-
time to enjoy those views.
I like that trail though. There's a lot of variety.
Yes.
You have stairs, and
Yes.
then you have
Switchbacks.
and
And gravel and rock. It's not that wet, so you don't need like fancy footwear like a Southeast Alaskan would wear with our rubber boots. You can do it in your tennis shoes if you
yeah,
want.
yeah, that's a nice one. I like that one.
Yeah.
I think it took me 3 hours. So if you're not in good shape, it'll take you 3 hours.
Okay,
Takes
fair
John
enough.
2 probably. Good. So we're almost done. You've given us so much great info. Do you have any fun stories or something that sticks out that an experience a guest had, or something that you could tell us that would just help us to remember this moment with John Neary?
The funnest conversation I think I remember was an Asian visitor. And it really struck me how different cultures interpret Alaska in their own way. Because we were at the door of the visitor center looking out over the lake, glacier in the back, nice day, lots of icebergs all through the lake. And the gentleman said to me, "When do you put the ice into the lake?" And I thought to myself, I think this is maybe a language barrier. I think maybe he means like, when does the glacier calve, and
Right.
when do the icebergs appear? Like maybe he wants to photograph them or something. And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And he said, "Well, do you put them out in the morning or do you put them out in the afternoon?"
Oh, he really
He really thought that the visitor center put the icebergs in the lake just for the visitors. And I thought, wow, I guess they do that in Asia, if you're
Maybe.
in a pond or something. But we certainly don't do that in Alaska, right? Where nature rules.
Yes.
The glacier decides when the bergs will appear or disappear. And that's really one of the special things about it, is that we can never tell what the next day will bring.
You know what? That really sums it up well, and it's one of the reasons I love my job and sharing Alaska with people. Is we're sharing something real, And I think sometimes people think, oh, cruise, they're not going to see real Alaska. No, this is real. We didn't build the Mendenhall Glacier as a tourist attraction. You know, we didn't find whales out in the ocean and bring them up the Inside Passage to show to tourists. This is it. This is the real thing. We locals love it just as much, and we're super proud to show it off all the time.
That's really well said.
And I'm so glad that you came today, and we'll probably hopefully do this again because you're such a great font of information.
Okay.
And thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me.